All right, get ready because today we're going to deep dive into some pretty extraordinary stuff. Merkabah Meditation.
Uh-huh.
No, I've always been fascinated by these practices that kind of blend ancient wisdom with, well, what some might call frontier science.
Yeah, it's a very unique blend. And what we're looking at today is a system described by Drunvalo Melchizedek.
Ah,
And he makes some pretty big claims.
oh, yeah.
Like
Gotcha.
he's talking about activating this really potent energy field around your body, which he calls a vehicle of ascension.
A vehicle of ascension. Okay, now I definitely got to hear more about that. We've got a document here that outlines this 17-breath Merkabah meditation. And just from skimming it, it looks pretty wild.
Yeah.
Spanning tetrahedrons, pranospheres, even reaching like incredible speeds.
Yeah.
I mean, are we even still talking about meditation
Yeah,
at this
it
point?
definitely pushes the boundaries of what people usually think of as meditation, that's for sure. It seems to draw on these ancient yogic techniques,
Ugh.
but then it adds this layer of like almost science fiction-y concepts about energy and consciousness.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. So let's break this down. Um, what does Drunvalo say about how to set the stage for this practice?
Well, first, he really stresses how important it is to create a dedicated space for it, like a sanctuary. He calls for a holy space, free from distractions. It's like you're building a container for all this powerful energy.
That makes sense. I mean, you definitely want to be somewhere quiet to really go deep with this. And it's not just about, finding a quiet corner, right? He says to make the space holy. What does that even mean?
It is interesting that he chooses those words, isn't it? It implies that this isn't just about being physically still,
Mhm.
but it's more about cultivating like reverence and intentionality, when you're approaching this. He makes it very clear that the foundation of this whole practice has to be genuine love for all life. Without that, he says that simply knowing the technique won't activate the Merkabah.
So you can't just go through the motions. You got to have the right mindset, the right intention,
Exactly.
like setting the stage for a performance.
Right.
Okay, I'm ready for the main act. What's this first breath all about?
Well, the first breath, sets the tone for the whole meditation. It's a pretty multi-layered experience. It requires you to synchronize your mind, your body, and your breath in a very specific way.
Okay, let's get specific then. What am I actually doing during this first breath?
So imagine like a three-dimensional pyramid, a tetrahedron. Drunvalo specifies a male tetrahedron. Now, that just refers to the orientation of it.
Okay.
So you're visualizing this as you inhale.
Wait, I'm already picturing pyramids in my head. And we're only on the first breath. This is definitely not your typical, meditation app.
Right.
Okay, so there's the visual. And there's a hand gesture too, right?
Yeah, you're also holding a mudra.
Hmm.
You're touching your thumb and first finger together. It's a really common gesture in a lot of different yogic traditions, often used to channel energy.
Okay, so we got the visual, we got the hand gesture. What about the breath itself? How am I supposed to be breathing?
Drunvalo recommends what's called the complete yogic breath. So it involves engaging your diaphragm, expanding your chest to fully fill your lungs. He actually quotes a passage from the Hindu yogi science of breath by Yogi Ramataraka, which gives a really detailed description of this technique.
Interesting.
It's all about creating a smooth, continuous flow of breath, like a wave.
So it's almost invigorating. So I'm picturing this pyramid. I'm holding the mudra, and I'm taking these really deep, full breaths.
Exactly.
What comes next?
Well, breaths 2 through 6, they follow a similar pattern. Each one has a different mudra. These breaths are really focused on cleansing your body's energy circuits. It's like prepping your system for, the more intense stuff to come.
I'm getting this sense of building energy here.
Yeah.
Like we're laying the foundation for something really remarkable.
That's a great way to put it.
So what changes with breath 7?
Breath 7 is where things start to shift pretty significantly. The visualization changes. And you bring in a new breathing pattern. Instead of the tetrahedron, you're now focusing on a tube of light running through your body.
A tube of light. Okay, this is where it starts to sound a little otherworldly, even for me.
Right. So this tube, it runs from the crown of your head all the way down to your tailbone.
Yeah.
And it's capped at both ends by the apexes of those tetrahedrons that you were visualizing in the previous breaths. So those pyramids are still there, but they're now connected by this central channel of energy.
It's like we're building a circuit, like a pathway for something to flow through.
Exactly.
What's flowing through it? Is this the prana that I keep hearing about?
That's right. Prana, it's often called like life force energy. It starts flowing from both ends of this tube to meet at your navel, forming a sphere of light. And the mudra changes too. Now you're touching your thumb, your first and your second fingers together.
So each breath is building on the last one. It's
Yeah.
like this progression, building towards something.
Exactly.
What happens to this sphere of prana as we keep breathing?
Well, that is a great question. And
Yeah.
we are going to get to that right after a quick break. So we left off with that sphere of prana forming at the navel.
Yeah, breaths 8 through 13, right? What happens with those?
Well, those breaths are all about expanding that sphere, intensifying it. Imagine like watching a seed sprout and grow and eventually blossom into this radiant sun.
Okay.
That's basically what's happening in your energy field.
So we're not just holding it there, we're like actively growing it with each breath.
Exactly, yeah. Drinvalo describes it as this feeling of getting brighter and brighter with each breath, almost like this building heat or intensity
Interesting.
until it reaches like a critical mass and bursts into a sun.
Wow.
It's a pretty vivid image, right?
Yeah, definitely. And there's this other detail I found really interesting, that the sphere's maximum size is personalized, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It's determined by the length of your longest finger.
That's right.
It's like your own body is informing the practice.
Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it? It
Yeah.
suggests that, this isn't just a one-size-fits-all thing. It's really tailored to each individual's, like, energetic blueprint.
All right, so we've gotten to breath 13,
Yeah.
and we've got this like blazing sun of energy at our navel. What happens next? Does it just stay there?
Well, that's where we get to the really significant part of the 14th breath.
Okay, lay it on me. What's so special about breath 14?
So with this breath, the meeting point of those prana beams shifts. It moves from the navel up to the sternum,
Okay.
which Drinvalo calls the fourth dimensional chakra.
Hold on. Fourth dimensional chakra. I think we're moving beyond basic anatomy here. Can you break that down a bit?
Right. So in a lot of different spiritual traditions, chakras are seen as these energy centers in the body.
Right.
They're often depicted as like these spinning wheels of light, each associated with different aspects of our being, physical, emotional, and spiritual.
I've heard of chakras, but this fourth dimensional element is new to me. What's that all about?
Well, Drinvalo says that this specific chakra, the one at the sternum, is connected to a higher level of consciousness. He calls it Christ consciousness.
Christ consciousness. Is he talking about, a religious figure here?
Not necessarily. It's more of a term that's used in a lot of different spiritual teachings to describe a state of expanded awareness, unconditional love,
Okay.
a sense of interconnectedness with everything. It's about like transcending the ego and tapping into a deeper sense of unity.
Okay, that makes more sense. So with breath 14, we're shifting this prana sphere up to the sternum. We're activating this fourth dimensional chakra and potentially like tapping into a higher state of consciousness. Anything else going on with this breath?
Yeah, there's a new mudra. It's left palm over right for males and reverse for females. And your breathing changes. It becomes a shallower rhythm. You're focusing more on the energy flow than on the physical act of breathing itself.
So it's like you're transitioning from like a physical practice to a more subtle, energetic practice. We're definitely reaching a turning point here. And I remember you mentioned earlier that Twimbalo actually gives a warning about the next few breaths, right?
Yeah, he does. He's pretty clear that the last three breaths, the ones that activate the Merkabah, shouldn't be attempted without guidance from your higher self. He really emphasizes the power and the potential intensity of these last stages.
Okay, so a warning from the expert himself that definitely makes me want to know more. What exactly does he say about these last three breaths?
Okay, so the 15th breath, this is about igniting the motor of the Merkabah.
Okay.
He describes visualizing three superimposed star tetrahedrons.
Three.
Yeah, essentially like two sets of those pyramids we were picturing before, one inside the other, and two of them start rotating in opposite directions.
Wait, 3-star tetrahedrons spinning at the same time. It's like we're building an interdimensional spaceship in our energy field.
Right. It's a very powerful image. And the mental command to make them spin is equal speed. So you're basically telling your mind to rotate them at the same rate, but in opposite directions.
So we're creating this field of spinning energy.
Exactly.
What's that feel like?
Well, he says that at this stage, the tetrahedrons are spinning at 1/3 the speed of light. Now, he does acknowledge that you probably won't actually see this with your physical eyes.
Right.
Because, the speed. But you might feel a shift in your energy.
1/3 the speed of light. That's pretty mind-boggling. But we were talking about energy here, right? Not physical matter.
That's right, yeah. It's subtle energy, not the kind of speed that's going to launch you out of your chair.
Good to know.
But still, it's a pretty powerful concept, to think about harnessing this energy within us.
Yeah, definitely. So what about the 16th breath? What happens then?
16th breath, things escalate pretty quickly. The mental command is 34-21. And this dramatically accelerates the spin ratio of those tetrahedrons.
Okay, I'm a little lost with the numbers and ratios. What's the
Mhm.
significance of those specific numbers?
Well, they're connected to sacred geometry and those mathematical proportions that are found throughout nature, but Drenvala doesn't really go into detail about their specific meaning in this context. He's more focused on the overall effect of this acceleration.
Okay.
So he describes the formation of a 55-foot disk around the body at the base of the spine, along with this flying saucer-shaped energy matrix.
Wow, okay, so this is the Merkabah.
Yeah. But at this stage, it's still unstable. He describes it as kind of wobbling, like it's trying to find its balance.
Makes sense. It's still in the early stages, right?
Exactly. And that's why the 17th breath is so important.
Okay, so we're almost at full activation here. What happens with this final breath? Does it stabilize the spinning?
It does, yeah. The mental command is 9/10 the speed of light. And with that, the Merkabah stabilizes, becoming a fully formed energy field.
9/10 the speed of light. Incredible. It's like reaching some sort of energetic threshold.
Mhm.
What does Drenvala say about that specific speed? Why is that significant?
Well, he points out that 9/10 the speed of light is the same speed at which electrons rotate around atoms.
Oh, wow.
And he suggests that this attunement is what allows the Merkabah to interface with our third-dimensional reality.
I never thought I'd be talking about atomic physics in a conversation about meditation. But I guess that's what the deep dive is all about, right?
Right. It really speaks to Drenvala's attempt to bridge, ancient wisdom with modern science. It's like he's saying that these seemingly separate realms are actually interconnected.
Yeah.
That the principles of physics are at play even in these subtle energy realms.
Yeah, it really makes you think differently about the nature of reality. So with breath 17, it seems like we've reached the peak of the meditation, right? The Merkabah is formed, it's spinning at this incredible speed, it's attuned to our physical reality. What happens next? Do we just stay in that state?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. Drenvala hints at the existence of an 18th breath, one that he doesn't really explain in detail, but he says it's necessary to go beyond the speed of light and enter the fourth dimension.
Wait, an 18th breath. He doesn't give any instructions for it.
No, he doesn't. He says this breath has to be received from your higher self.
Your higher self.
Yeah.
So it's not something you could just learn from a book.
Right. It's about connecting with your own inner wisdom.
Oh.
Receiving guidance from within.
I'm starting to understand why he gave that warning earlier. This is definitely not something to be taken lightly.
No.
But it's definitely intriguing. I mean, it makes you wonder, what could that 18th breath be? And what is this fourth dimension he keeps talking about?
It's a big question, and one that we can explore further as we continue our deep dive into the Merkabah and all its mysteries. That 18th breath,
Yeah, that's what I want to know more about.
the one Drenvala doesn't really teach but says we need it.
To go beyond the speed of light into the fourth dimension. It's
Yeah.
a lot.
It is, and it's not something you can just learn from a book.
Right, he said it comes from your higher self. But
Exactly.
how do you even access that? It all seems so mystical,
It does kind of invite us to move beyond just the purely rational mind. Connecting with your higher self, it's often about quieting the mind,
Okay.
tuning in to that deeper source of wisdom within.
So is it meditation? Is it intuition? What does that actually look like?
Well, it can be different for everyone. For some people, it might be traditional practices like meditation or contemplation. Others might find it in nature or through creative pursuits.
Okay.
Or even just paying attention to those little nudges,
Interesting.
those intuitive insights that come up during the day.
So being open to a different way of knowing.
Exactly. It's a very subtle but powerful form of guidance.
Okay, I'm starting to get it.
Yeah.
But back to the Merkabah itself.
Okay.
Drenvala calls it a vehicle of ascension. What's he talking about? Like literal space travel?
No, not really in that sense. He's suggesting that activating the Merkabah helps shift your consciousness, like a movement from third-dimensional awareness to a fourth-dimensional, maybe even higher reality.
So it's not just experiencing this energy field.
Right.
It's potentially evolving your whole being.
Yeah. That's the idea. And it connects with this whole concept of ascension,
Mm.
which has been explored in a lot of spiritual traditions. It's
Mhm.
often described as this process of awakening,
Okay.
transcending limitations, realizing our true nature.
That's a pretty big concept to wrap your head around.
It is.
If we can consciously ascend to higher dimensions, what does that say about us? Like, what's our
Exactly.
potential? What's our purpose?
So many questions. And then there's the ripple effects, you know?
Right.
What if more people start activating their Merkabahs? Could it impact, like, the collective consciousness, change humanity's trajectory?
Like, we're all connected,
Yeah,
part of a larger web.
exactly.
Our choices affect the whole.
That's a very powerful thought.
It is.
It really gets at the potential of these kinds of practices, you know? Not just for personal transformation,
Right.
but for creating a more harmonious world.
So, after all this, what do you think about the Merkabah? Is it something you think people should explore?
I think it definitely needs careful consideration and a lot of discernment.
Yeah.
Drunvalo himself says it's not something to be taken lightly, remember?
Right.
But I do believe there's a lot of potential in exploring these realms of consciousness,
Yeah.
pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible.
It's easy to get caught up in the specifics of the technique.
Right.
All the visualizations, the spinning tetrahedrons, all
Mhm.
that. But it seems like the heart of this practice is really about connecting with that deeper part of ourselves, right?
I agree. It's about cultivating trust,
Okay.
surrender, allowing ourselves to be guided by something bigger than our egos.
And even if we never fully activate our Merkabahs
Yeah.
or travel to other dimensions,
Right.
just thinking about these concepts opens up new possibilities.
It definitely reminds us that reality is much more expansive and mysterious than we usually think it is. And that within each of us, there's a huge potential for transformation.
Well, this deep dive has definitely been a journey. We've only just scratched the surface.
We have. But hopefully it sparks some curiosity,
Yeah.
a willingness to explore these hidden dimensions within ourselves and in the world around us.
Well said. And for everyone listening, we encourage you to keep exploring, do your research, reflect, meditate, maybe even try some of these techniques we've been talking about. Who knows what you might find? Like Drunvalo says, that 18th breath is out there,